All right, there's no time like the present, right? Might as well dive in and get started here on this week's Panther-Lair Show. Doing it a day early, doing it on Tuesday because we got some other things going on tomorrow night. That happens sometimes. You know how the schedule goes. And of course, what we always tell you if you're worried about missing the show because we changed the schedule up, maybe you didn't hear me talk about it on the morning pit or didn't see me tweet about it or post on the boards or whatever. But if you're worried about missing the show, you know, it's, oh man, you can't change the schedule like that. I'll never know about it. Best way to make sure you don't miss anything is to subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Do that, turn on your notifications, and you get an alert sent to your phone every time we go live, every time we post new videos, all those things. You'll be caught up on it. You won't miss anything if you just subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Every now and then we have to switch things up. I feel like there's another Wednesday coming up in a couple of weeks and I have something else going on. I forget what it is. Probably a kid event or something like that. That's what we have. We have youth baseball tomorrow night. So that game starts at 8 o'clock. I don't think I'm going to make it for the live stream here at 8:30, but every now and then it happens, you know, particularly over the summer, we have to change things up and go with different days. Don't do it often, but on the case that we do it, good way to make sure you don't miss it is to subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And then you'll be locked in for all of our Pitt video content. You know, Pitt fan H2P says, love the show, Chris. Part of my morning routine. Yeah, we have our daily morning Pitt show every Monday through Friday. A little bit of Pitt sports talk to get your day started. Really been focusing on the Pitt football talk this week, trying to stay out of the, some of those bigger topics we got into last week. It started bringing me down a little bit. It got a little bit too heavy here on the morning Pit. So just talking about some football stuff. We got a good football episode tomorrow. We'll see what that one brings. You know, Monday we talked about 5 players we're not talking about enough. Today we talked about 5 position battles, right? 5 big position battles to watch. And we got another one coming tomorrow. We'll see if you can you're probably not going to guess what it is. It doesn't matter. It's one of those sort of classic standard, talk radio, 5 things type of topic radio. But I think it's actually fun. I'm looking forward to it. Interested to hear what you guys think of those. But if you want to make sure you don't miss any of it, of course, like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and then go over and check out the website, Panther-Lair.com. Panther-Lair.com. It's a Pitt site on the 247 Sports Network. Get all the Pitt football, basketball, recruiting, transfer portal coverage. And then, of course, talk to other Pitt fans, hang out with other Pitt fans all day, every day, right there on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. I forgot. I was going to put this on the front page of the website. Maybe I should, I'm going to bring Jim in. Maybe I should just let Jim take over the show for like 5 minutes while I put this on the front page of the website. I don't know if you noticed I was doing that, Jim. I started putting it.
I did notice.
Page of the site, just to try and draw a little more attention. I don't know if it's having any impact, but I completely forgot to do it today. So not very effective there. Jim, yesterday on the morning pit, I talked about 5 players I don't think we're talking about enough. And I forget what my list was. But if I say that to you, so, players we're not talking about enough. Who is there somebody who comes to mind? Like who sticks out? Who do you feel like, I mean, we talk about all of this stuff all the time, but like, you feel like there's some guys we're not talking about enough?
Like whenever you brought up that topic and like, I started like kind of racking my brain and I have one and it's a pretty notable player, I would say. But I just think he's kind of poised for a breakout year. And I think it's Ryan Baer. I think Ryan Baer is a good player. I think he has pro potential. I think at times he has been, a punching bag for Pitt fans because he's had to move around positions and all that. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think he was one of their highest rated linemen to, commit to Pitt recently. He's been a multi-year starter, but, just the way he looked in spring, I mean, you could tell he really took to his body, lost a lot of weight. He's moving around well. And we've seen lately a lot of linemen that, have started off as kind of not journeymen, but guys that have, bounced around, eventually they kind of get to a point where they're pretty good players. I mean, just, recently Matt Gonsalves, Branson Taylor, I kind of think Ryan Baer is kind of due for that kind of jump. So I don't know if we're talking about him a lot. I don't know if we're talking about guys that are like multi-year starters a lot. But I don't know. I can see where Ryan Baer has a big season coming up this year.
That's an interesting choice. I didn't really think about him. I picked a different offensive lineman. I picked Lyndon Cooper. That I feel like maybe it's just me. I've spent so much time talking about the left side of the offensive line. I just don't really, and and then we just sort of, I sort of take the right side for granted, Bear, like you mentioned, and BJ Williams, but I feel like Lyndon Cooper is really, really solid. And pressure stats can be like a tough thing with the center. How much are they blitzing up the middle of the offensive line? But like, his pass rush snaps, his pass blocking snaps, he did a really good job last year. There wasn't much pressure that came up the middle with Lyndon Cooper. I kind of put him on that list. It's weird. And it's especially weird in light of something Pro Football Focus said today, but I almost feel like we don't talk about Rasheem Biles enough. I mean, like, we talk about him a lot and we assume him as being really good, but I feel like our level of conversation about him, and you and I, but just general what we see on the boards and stuff like that, I don't think it matches up with what his potential really is. I think he can have an even bigger year than like Kyle Lewis had last year. And in some ways, he had a bigger year last year than Kyle Lewis did. Like tackles per game, I think Lewis was better, but they both ended up right around the same. I think Lewis had 15 and a half tackles for loss. Biles had 15, and Biles played one fewer game. I think the sack numbers, again, it favored Biles. I think he was like, no, wait, what did Lewis have? Like 7 sacks or something like that last year?
I believe. Yeah, 7 and a half.
Yeah, and Biles had 6. And again, playing one fewer game. He didn't have the 4 interceptions like Lewis did, but he did have 1 interception. And some of that's a matter of opportunity. I just think, he's a little bit bigger than Kyle Lewis. I think he's a really good athlete, and I think he might have a higher ceiling, and none of that is meant to disparage Kyle Lewis. I think Kyle Lewis was awesome last year, and I think he's going to be pretty great again this year. I don't know. I don't think we've given him as much credit as he deserves. You know what I mean?
I can buy that. And I think there is a world where like he is as good as Kyle Lewis was this past season, and Kyle Lewis was like a second team All-American. So like there is a real possibility. Like whenever, Pro Football Focus says like Pitt has the most, the top returning linebacker duo, I mean, they're doing it based off of whatever their metrics are and stuff like that. But I mean, eye test wise, I mean, like they're that good. Like Rasheem Biles is that good. So I've liked him since he was a recruit, because he was like, I think he was out of like Pickerington and, near Columbus, and he had like a bunch of interceptions, a bunch of defensive touchdowns. He played safety. And like, I remember when they were recruiting him, I was like, there's no way they're going to move him to linebacker. This guy's like, he gets his hands on everything. So like, he just kind of gravitates towards the ball. And it's like, really, it's been impressive to see that like, he wasn't a highly recruited guy. I think his only other Power 4 offer was like West Virginia. And, he just kind of fit their scheme. He kind of does what they do. And yeah, Pitt just has 2 really good linebackers. So I do think we just kind of, it's Kyle Lewis this, Kyle Lewis that. But yeah, like in most years, like I think we would all be really excited about the prospects of Rasheem Biles on his own.
Yeah. And, his recruitment was interesting because he had some offers like early, but I think some of the other like power conference schools backed off a little bit because, and I've said this a bunch of times, they weren't sure if he was like, they didn't think he was fast enough to play safety, and they didn't think he was big enough to play linebacker. They felt like he was too much of a tweener with not enough strengths at either spot. And Pitt looked at him and was like, hell yeah, you can play here. Like, you're going to be awesome at outside linebacker. And he was like, really, I guess it started with, like Kamara and DeShields in that 2020 class of this trend of linebacker recruits. I mean, you could go back to like Sean Idowu and Elijah Zeiss, guys who they're not as big as your traditional sort of linebacker targets, and they played other positions. They were safeties in high school. They were wide receivers in high school. But I mean, there's really been a run of these guys, DeShields and Kamara in 2020. I forget who was in the 21 class. It was like Preston Levant or something like that, but those guys didn't even visit it. That was that weird COVID recruiting year. But Kyle Lewis in 22, and then that great Biles. Biles was in the 23 class, right? With Lovelace and Jordan Bass. Again, all guy like Jordan Bass, we always say this, the first clip on his highlight film, he was catching a screen pass and going 65 yards with it. There aren't many linebackers who have a 65-yard screen pass touchdown on their highlight film, but that was the kind of athlete he was. I mean, they've just been on this run of getting these guys who fit this kind of mold. And I think they looked at Biles and they're like, you're exactly the thing. And I would think like they looked at Cam Lindsey and felt the same way. Davin Bruton's a little bit bigger, but who else did they bring in this year? Justin Thompson.
Yeah.
Is he the line? Yeah, he's the linebacker, right? Athletic guy, and we're seeing it with the guys they recruit and the guys that they're going after. It's high school safeties who happen to be bigger, and that's the mold. Biles is the mold. Jordan Bass is the mold. Kyle Lewis is the mold.
Yeah, and I kind of remember like way back when they were recruiting Solomon DeShields, he had like 17 receiving touchdowns in high school or something like ridiculous. Like he was almost at a point where I think he was just listed as an athlete. Like I don't think anyone knew what to do with him. So it's just kind of been their trend, and just whatever they're doing right now, schematically, recruiting, development, just everything's clicking right now at linebacker. And we've seen that at different times throughout, Pat Narduzzi's tenure, where some positions are just working. Like there was just a couple year run wherever it was just like Charlie Partridge, just like everything he touched turned to gold. So like for whatever reason right now, Ryan Manilek's just doing a really good job of identifying talent, developing it, and coaching it. And like right now you're starting to see it. I mean, like Servassier Dennis getting drafted, I think was a big deal. Brandon George, like has a decent chance to make an NFL roster, I think. And now you have all American linebackers, all conference linebackers. It's just like, it's at a point where it's like, the way we always talked about Charlie Partridge and how teams are going to come swoop in and take them. Like, I don't know. I would think probably pretty soon other schools are going to be looking to like, oh, maybe we should get this Manilek guy at linebacker coach because he's doing a really good job.
Yeah. It's funny too. Like you're right. We talked about Charlie Partridge so much about how he'd done and what he had built, and for good reason. I mean, like, Patrick Jones and Rashad Weaver were all Americans. I mean, that was a really strong run. And Kalijah Kancey ends up being an All-American and all that. But like, what is really sustained has been safeties and linebackers. And Partridge, the current state of the defensive line is not all on him, but they have a lot more transfers to defensive end and defensive tackle. Well, I guess they have one at defensive tackle, but they have a lot more transfers on the defensive line than they have at linebacker or safety. And I think it's because Partridge's recruiting didn't hold up, whereas Manilek's recruiting at linebacker, Corey Sanders recruiting at safety, Archie Collins recruiting at cornerback, I think has sustained and been just as strong, if not stronger, which is interesting because we held Charlie Partridge up on such a pedestal, but it doesn't feel like it's sustained as much as those other spots. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes and no, because like I think that's part of the reason why Charlie Partridge left. It's like, I mean, I thought he still had some like, Samuel Okunlola, but Sincere Edwards, like he was still landing pretty good players. It's just the fact that those guys kept asking for money every offseason, I think just kind of grew on him. But like I think they had some good defensive linemen that transferred away. And so I don't know if he necessarily missed. It was just like what became of college football kind of turned him off of college football. So I don't know. I mean, I think had he stayed, or, if the roles were a little more, I don't know, reeled in some way, like he still would have maintained success. I think he just he didn't have the stomach to just keep doing how, things have gone.
Maybe. I mean, off the top of my head, though, I'm thinking, I could go back as far as the 2021 class with Elliott Donald and Nakai Johnson and Dorian Ford and Naquan Brown, who never, panned out. And like Sincere Edwards transferred out, and Sam Okunlola transferred out, Deion Hayes transferred out, but like Emmanuel Belgrave transferred out, Sam Williams transferred out, who's Antonio Cayman transferred out. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like his recruiting held up. Like he still had some hits, like no doubt. And I think, he had something to do with, the recruitment of Francis Brew and Jasir Whittington and Isaiah Neal. I mean, like those are good players in there, but I don't know if it quite lived up either way. That's a whole other conversation we could have. I actually, the other guy I thought of that I don't think we talk about enough, who I think is going to play a pretty significant role in the team, is Jake Overman. And I don't know what he's going to end up doing, but I mean, Gavin Bartholomew caught 36, 38 catches last year. Yeah, like those passes have to go somewhere, and they're not all going to go to the receivers and the running backs, and I don't think they're going to go to Malachi Thomas. I thought he had a chance, but boy, that's spring game. It sure did feel like a lot of balls bounced off of his hands. And so I'm not sure if it's going to be him. I think Jake Overman could have like sort of a sneakily productive, solid season, and catch 30 38 to 42 passes and maybe catch 4 or 5 touchdowns like Bartholomew did. I think he could have like a decent season, a useful season.
Yeah, like looking at tight end, like I've somehow like I've downplayed like that Eli Holstein like struggled in the spring game, but like I remember the Malachi Thomas drops for some reason. Like I don't know why I'm holding those against him, and I'm not holding those like wounded duck throws by Eli against him. But I don't know. But I agree in that regard. But I think Jake Overman, and I think this is like a phrase you've used a couple of times. It's like he's more useful in the passing game than you expected him to be, and I kind of agree with that. It's for what this offense needs out of its tight end to see the amount of targets Gavin Bartholomew got. I think he can do that exact same thing and give you that exact same type of production. So I think he's important just because it does get thin after him. I mean, you're talking about a transfer who's more of an H-back than a true tight end. You're talking about a true freshman who was a high school wide receiver who needs to put on weight. And you're talking about a sophomore who couldn't catch a ball in the spring game. So, yeah, like he's very important to this team. And I think, the whole transfer portal market for football has kind of been like dead lately. But I think they are linked to some tight end, like the guy from like Florida A&M. But like there's like 5 or 6 other schools. I don't know how serious the pursuits are. But, yeah, I mean, the way it looks, it's like, yeah, Jake Overman, like I think he can produce and I think he almost has to.
Yeah. Which spring game performance are you more inclined to overreact to? Malachi Thomas dropping a bunch of passes or Kateris Blue Hicks having that long catch and run? Which spring game performance has affected or changed your perception of that player more?
I mean, I guess obviously like Thomas, like just the way I spoke, because I thought he could be a useful player, and maybe he can be. Maybe it was just like a one-off situation, and he caught everything in spring camp and behind closed doors when we're not there. But I don't know. I kind of had a positive vibe with Hicks. I mean, like he was at a Power 4 school last year. I figured he had some game, and like I think we talked about this a few weeks ago, but like he scored that 75-yard touchdown there. Like, would that have happened in pads? He's like, nobody touched me. Come on. He's like, I got this. So I like that he has some confidence to his game. He kind of fits that like Poppy Williams, just like I'm small. I was always overlooked, but like I can play. So like he kind of has that mindset. So I'll give him that.
He, I think when we first interviewed him, it was pretty clear that like we would probably get limited interactions with him as the season goes on because I mean, like his first interview when we talked to him in like January, he talked about how like he was in Louisville's bowl game and by like halftime he knew he was going to transfer. Like he was already thinking about it because he wasn't getting enough targets. And it was like, oh, well, nice to meet you. This is the last time we'll ever talk to you. And no, we got to talk to him again at the spring game. And I think he more than lived up to it. So yeah, that guy. But I don't know. I might say that my impression of Hicks was affected more by that play just because I didn't really know what he was going to be able to do. I mean, a guy can have a bad day dropping passes, but I mean, Hicks at least showed kind of what he's got out there, what he could possibly contribute. A couple comments and questions here from some people. Let's see. Will Z says, hell yeah, I love my pit chat doom scrolling a day early, getting mentally ready for another 7-6 roller coaster. Well, first of all, it's probably too early to prepare yourself at all mentally for the season to come. I don't know about 7-6 roller coaster. I think we talked last week about records. Did somebody ask us for like record predictions? I mean, it's going to come up every now and then. I started putting together a spreadsheet. I went and looked at Bill Connolly on ESPN of the returning production. And then I like looked at each team on Pitt's schedule of just, do they bring back their leading passer, their leading rusher, receiver, touchdown scorer, and all this stuff. And I'm still working on this. I'm about a third of the way through the season, but it's occurring to me that even if they didn't bring these players back, they probably got transfers who will. I'm not looking to see if the transfers they brought in were their former team's leading scorer or passer or touchdown, whatever. It's just so hard to gauge. I mean, other than West Virginia lost everybody. Like that's one of the few conclusions I've been able to draw so far is they don't, and not, not all of them left due to transfer. A lot of them were just out of eligibility, but West Virginia basically lost everybody. But then you have to research and go into who they brought in. So it's, I don't know. I still think it's tough to get a real handle on a record prediction. Adam Vinchik, this is an interesting conversation here, says, I hope the transfer defensive ends are better this year than last. I don't see any way that the 3 transfers they brought in a defensive end this year could possibly do less than the 3 transfers they brought in a defensive end last year. Right?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, I don't even really know if like Chief Borders like put up a stat like in like most of the games he played in. Like he was out there, like he had snaps logged, but I don't know if there was pressures, tackles for loss, sacks, just tackles in general. Like I mean, he was just kind of out there filling out an 11-man, space. So I think this is something we've talked about before. It's just like they actually brought in defensive ends this year. Last year, they were trying to do a lot of projections and, okay, like Chief Borders, you were always a stand-up edge. Like now we're going to put your hand in the dirt. So it's like they were kind of banking on guys taking to new positions. Whereas this year it's, okay, Blaine Spires has been a defensive end, a starting college defensive end at multiple programs for several seasons. So like it's guys like that. So I do think there's probably something to it. And I mean, I think a lot of it is like, yeah, last year they also didn't have Jimmy Scott. Like they didn't have anyone they could count on that was like gonna be an anchor to the group. Like at least like Jimmy Scott like started 12 games last year. Like they can at least start there and build around him. It was just like last year was like they were just starting fresh at both spots and on the depth chart.
Chief Borders last year total between defense and special teams played 442 snaps. He recorded 11 tackles. 442 snaps, 11 tackles. He had 1 tackle for loss, 0.5 sacks. According to Pro Football Focus, 11 pressures over the course of 13 games. He played in every game, although he only played 3 defensive snaps against Toledo. You remember getting hurt or anything like that?
Just so much other things happened that game. I wasn't keeping track of his snap count.
And if he got hurt after 3 snaps, it was probably early in the game, which means it was like approximately 5.5 hours before the game actually ended. So, but yeah, Chief Borders just remarkably unproductive. David Ojebwe never got on the field. Nate Madlack got close, but could not finish the play. The guy, I tell you, And I'll talk about him on tomorrow's Morning Pit. That's why I've done like some research. But like Jaden Moore is like the potential is scintillating of what this guy can be. He is getting close to being the my like hype train guy for 2025. Which ridiculous stat do I want to give you? All right, here we go. According to Pro Football Focus, last year, Jaden Moore had the 6th best pass rush win rate for Oregon. Okay, it's pretty good, right? He only had 70 snaps, 70 pass rush snaps, and he had the 6th best pass rush win rate. Now, those 5 guys ranked ahead of him. 4 of them played fewer pass rush snaps than Jaden Moore did. I almost said Chief Borders. So the only player at Oregon who had a better pass rush win rate and played more pass rush snaps than Jaden Moore last year was Derek Harmon. 1st-round draft pick. Another one. So first of all, I think that's pretty remarkable. I looked throughout all the edge rushers in the Big Ten who had at least 70 pass rush snaps last year and took their, pressures divided by pass rushes, for a percentage. What percentage of their pass rushes end up turning into pressures? Like Mikhail Kamara from Indiana, 16.7%. Seems pretty good. Abdul Carter, Penn State, 18.9%. Again, pretty good rate, pretty close to 20%. Jack Sawyer, 16.8%. Those were like the top 3 in the Big Ten last year. In total pressures, that was their like pressure rate. So all those guys, 16.7 for Kamara, 18.9 for Carter, 16.8 for Jack Sawyer. Jaden Moore, 22.9% of his pass rushes turned into. Now, Abdul Carter had 5 times the pass rush snaps that Jaden Moore did. So did Kamara, so did Sawyer. Those guys all had 300, 400 pass rushes. So there's a sample size thing to consider, but in the small sample size, Jaden Moore was pretty awesome. And I think this is the kind of guy Pitt needs to get out of the portal, right? They need to find those guys who flash potential, but they're looking for the opportunity for more playing time. And that's what Pitt can offer. And like, I don't know, man. If you're putting up numbers that compare favorably to those 3 guys I just met, 4 guys, if you include Derek Harmon, Mikhail Kamara, Abdul Carter, Jack Sawyer, like you put up numbers that compare favorably to those guys, and then you use him for 300 pass rushes himself this year. I don't know. Jaden Moore might be a stud. He might be a stud. Do you have a favorite defensive end out of this group?
Oh, I mean, I think you just sold me on Jaden Moore, but I think I was kind of high on him on the first place, just because like I kind of say this in basketball sometimes. It's like I'm okay with like taking guys that were on a really good team last year, like kind of bringing that like mindset. Like he had to fight and claw to get on the field because Oregon was ranked in the top 3 all year. So like he was going up against some of the best in the country, and when he got his chances, he made the most out of them. So I think this is what you do. This is what the transfer portal is. It's finding guys that you're kind of banking on that'll work for you. And I think he, to a T, kind of fits exactly into Pitt's 4-3 attacking defensive end scheme. I mean, it's a lot of downhill, and that's what he's good at. So I think it's a good fit. And I like that it's like a multi-year guy potentially. I mean, you're not just like getting a graduate transfer in Joey Zielinski. You're getting a guy that maybe like he could be a really good player this year and he's one of your cornerstones next year. I mean, I think, it has that kind of upside, and I like betting on upside.
He could be the guy that we're talking about in December. Like, oh, are they going to be able to come up with the NIL package to hold on to him? Or, is he going to stick? Let's see, move through here. Pitt fan H2P says, I heard Pitt football is selling lots of season tickets. Is this true? I don't know. Probably. They're probably selling thousands of season tickets, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, Notre Dame at home this year, I would imagine that brings out a strong contingent of our Catholic friends. So, yeah, I would imagine just like anytime Notre Dame, West Virginia, or Penn State are on the season, the home slate, like the season ticket sales go up, whether that's more Pitt fans interested in going to the games or that's Notre Dame fans looking for a cheap way to go to a Notre Dame game. So one or the other, I mean, it benefits.
And probably both.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably both. I think, casual Pitt fans might be more inclined to buy that season ticket package with a premier opponent like that. And then, like you said, the Notre Dame fans as well. L421 wants to know, Chris, do you think Pitt sabotaged the basketball program for a pipe dream of being a powerhouse football school? The reality is we're not just Clemson. I guess the question's about moving to the ACC, right? That's sort of the implication here, that by moving to the ACC, Pitt sabotaged the basketball program for the pipe dream of being a powerhouse football school. I mean, I think that was a desperation move to stay alive, right? You had to move into one of the bigger conferences. The Big East wasn't going to cut it. The Big East wasn't going to get a big enough TV deal to make it viable, So I don't think they intentionally sabotaged basketball to save football. I think they did what they felt like they had to do to save football and hopefully keep basketball afloat, right? Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, football always pays the bills. So, like, I think you always have to be of the mindset, at least if you're at this level, that what can I do to make football the most comfortable and the most money? And at the time for Pitt in 2011 or whenever it was like, all right, we got to join the ACC. Like, you could see the dominoes starting to fall that the Big East just wasn't going to be there. So, I mean, had Pitt stayed in the Big East, they would have sabotaged the whole football program. And who knows where it would be right now if it stayed there. It'd be in the AAC playing against Tulsa on a Wednesday night on ESPN2 at 9:00. Like, that's where Pitt would be. So, I mean, I think they made the right decision. I think what led to the basketball's downfall was just some general regression from Jamie Dixon to a bad hire to Kevin Stallings to obviously a very tenuous tenure here with Jeff Capel. I mean, I think there's a world where Pitt's basketball could have survived in an ACC move. I think there was just a lot of things they did poorly following it.
Right. And it's not like they went to a bad basketball conference. I mean, I know it's been questionable.
At the time, it was the ACC. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Adam Vinchik says, I feel like the commitment from Michigan is in the Lewis and Biles mold. Yeah. We were talking about Pitt's linebacker recruiting, getting these safety type of guys. Marcus Jennings is the guy he's referring to from Cass Tech, a 6'2", 200-pound linebacker prospect. For a while, Jim, I felt like Jennings was probably going to be the toughest commitment in this class for Pitt to hold on to. I wonder about Demetrius McCray, the wide receiver they got last week, who committed. Right now, Jennings is the highest rated recruit in the class. I think McCray has a chance to blow up and really be tough to hold on to. Out of the 5 commitments right now, do you feel like Jennings is the going to be the toughest one to keep, or do you see somebody else in the class being the hardest hold?
I mean, of the 5 commitments, I think it would be McCray, because I think the very next day after he committed, like NC State offered, then I think like Purdue basically offered like all of Pitt's recruiting class like today. So I don't know what Purdue's motives are, but yeah, I mean, I think Pitt did have a good eye for like a guy like Marcus Jennings, because I think when he committed, it was mostly just MAC schools, but I think other Big Ten schools are starting to show interest. And again, Pitt has a type. They know what they're looking for. And I think sometimes other schools kind of follow what Pitt's doing in terms of like how they recruit their linebackers and safeties. Like I think you often see Pitt will offer a guy first, and all of a sudden they have 5 more Power 5 offers quickly. So that doesn't surprise me. And he goes to a big high school in Michigan too. I mean, Cass Tech has all the exposure. They go to all the camps. Every college in the country, when they're rolling through Detroit, stops at Cass Tech. So He's going to be a hard one to keep hidden just because of where he goes to high school.
Yeah, there's no secrets there. It was it last year? They had was it a Cass Tech kid committed, or was it a different Detroit school?
It was Belleville, but
okay.
What's what it was? Elijah Dotson, right?
That's it. I knew it was Elijah, but I couldn't remember what his last name was. That's right. And where did he go to? Michigan?
Yeah.
Okay. I was. It all sounded familiar, but I couldn't exactly remember. All right. Joey Dealey says, any news on Roman Sialepa? And did you see he made the under-19 Australian team? Hopefully we can land him. Our weekly question about Roman Sialepa, Jim, we did see about making the U19 Australian team. What do you make of that?
Well, my initial thought when I saw that, and he even put it on his Instagram story. So we're at that point where we're checking Instagram stories of the 18-year-old Australian prospect. But my initial thought was, if he's playing at that level of basketball and that caliber of tournament, like the idea that he's going to go pro in rugby seems very unlikely now. And like that was even like, I bet, like truthfully, it was a discussion. I mean, it seemed like he really liked rugby, and there's a reason why he's still available right now, is because a lot of colleges didn't know what he wanted to do. So I think that's at least shows like, okay, like basketball's now the focus. And I mean, it's been the same for weeks now. I mean, it's like, we know there's contact, we know there's a lot of interest. We don't know why it's not happened yet. So still kind of in wait and see mode. But I mean, I think the roster is kind of clearing up lately. I mean, I think we're at a point now we kind of know what the numbers are. I mean, I think it's, they have 11 scholarship players on the books for right now. They just kind of redid and updated the roster, and they 2 walk-ons moved on, but 2 have stayed on. So it's like they probably have 2 spots to play around with, and obviously, ideally, he takes up one of them.
Yeah. And really, it could, depending on how the house settlement ends up getting worked out, at least for this year, they could have more than 2. Like, it could be a 15-player roster limit with grandfathering in guys like Mayhew and Nelson, the walk-ons, so that they have their spots, but those don't count against the 15. So, I think there's different ways it could go. It seems like they could probably use 3 more guys, because bring up a question, our next question here, Devin Cambridge, who's visiting Pitt this week. Apparently he's like going to be a 7th-year guy, played like 5 or 6 games last year, and only a handful the year before because he got hurt. He's played at like 4 different schools. I forget, one of them was Texas Tech. Was that the most recent school he was at?
Yeah, most recent at Texas Tech. So he actually had a pretty conventional career up until the past 2 years. Like he played in 3 seasons at Auburn, 91 games, never really missed time, started a bunch of them. Then he had 1 season at Arizona State and played well, averaged around 10 points a game, 5 rebounds a game. Then the past 2 seasons, he's played 8 and then 6 games, both with injuries. So, okay, so that's 6 seasons. He played 4 normal seasons. 1 was a COVID year. So I went back and looked. He's in the recruiting class of 2019.
Oh, wow.
That is when Justin Champagnie entered college. So that's how long he has been playing college basketball here. So I don't know, another veteran player. I think he's played 150 college games, not particularly a big time scorer or a big time shooter, but kind of goes into that what they've been building in terms of getting tougher, grown men, that kind of thing. So I don't know how serious it is. I mean, to answer the question, I would think it's only a 1 day visit. The ones with transfer portals, they only seem to be like the guys pop in for a day, and that's kind of it.
Just kind of move quickly
Keep it
on it.
moving.
Yeah, right. But so if they take him, you know, I guess to the point about the roster limit question, like whether they take him or not, they need a shooter and a 4, right? Like he doesn't really seem to answer. Those are the two big needs left for this team, and he doesn't really seem to answer either one, right? Like, could he be an undersized 4? Could Barry Dunning Jr. be an undersized 4? It seems to me they still need a shooter and a 4. So they almost need the grandfather clause if they were to take this guy and get Roman Cioleba and get a shooter, which we haven't really seen them linked to a shooter recently, have we? Have any new names? I
mean,
any new
Cambridge
names.
has kind of been the only name the past like week or two. So
Right. So like they almost need 3 spots if they're going to take this guy because they took 2 developmental high school kids, who will probably redshirt. Like I think taking those 2 guys, Kieran Mullen and Henry Cody Lau, and I don't know if he's going to want to just go by Henry Lau or not, but I've been
going Henry.
Once I get it in to my head that a guy has 3 names, man, I just do it. Henry Cody Lau, it's just going to be there. Taking those 2 guys who were both developmental prospects, probably likely to redshirt. You only take those guys if you think the roster limits are going to sort of be kind of fungible this year. You know what I mean? That you're going to be able to move guys, move around and probably have more than 15 players on your roster. Because you cannot get Devin Cambridge, who's older than you, Jim, and Roman Cioleba and be like, that's it, we're done. You can't. Like, you can't try to win games with scoring 53 points. You know what I mean? Like, I just, who's scoring on that team? Is anyone making 3-pointers?
I don't know. When I look at that roster, I mean, they have like 6 or 7 guys that could all average between 8 and 11 points. I don't know if they have one guy that I'm like, okay, that's your guy that can get you 15 to 20 a night. And I mean, that's just kind of realistic right now. I mean, and like, unless they're like banking on a lot of improvement or just production that has never been there all of a sudden getting there. I mean, like, is Brandon Cummings going to go from 4 points a game to 16 points a game? I don't know. But right now, the way it looks, I don't know who their sharpshooter is. I don't know who the guy's going to average 37% from 3 or who's going to average 15 points a game or who's that go-to guy in the, at the under 4 timeout of a close game. Like, I don't know who's taking that shot. So they have a lot of useful pieces on this roster, a lot of things I like about it, but like, I don't know. I mean, it gets kind of tough whenever you're trying to like think like, can this team really contend with the 5 or 6 best teams in the ACC? And right now, I'm leaning towards no.
I mean, they got to be able to shoot.
Yeah,
I just don't know who's going to shoot. I like Cummings. I'm a big Brandon Cummings fan, but like if he's your only guy and he's your best shooter, it's not great. All right. Kurt46 says, do you expect any big news or announcements from Amelia Island for the ACC? Well, actually, this was something I was going to bring up. I don't know if you saw this, Jim. The ACC spring meetings. Russ Dellinger tweeted this out about an hour and a half ago, almost 2 hours ago. Said, proposal for a remade spring calendar has been shared with coaches of the ACC spring meetings, including the addition of 6 contactless OTA-style practices, likely in May and June. Did you see this?
I did not.
Okay, so there's that, all right? So they're talking about adding 6 practices, probably in May or June, non-contact OTA-style practices. Dellinger goes on to say, however, depending on what version of the proposal is approved, coaches may have the flexibility to spread the 21 practices over 2 5-week periods in the spring and summer. So whatever, adding 6 extra practices, or actually what he's saying there is 2 5-week periods, one February to April, one May to June. And you could take your 21 practices, the 15 spring practices and these 6 new practices, and kind of do them however you want, which would be interesting, right? Like if you, like spring camp, instead of being 15 practices over 5 weeks, could be spread out into 2 separate periods. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. But there's one more part. He says any approval from an NCAA P4 committee wouldn't come until after a decision is made on the timing of a single transfer portal window, which won't happen until the House settlement is approved. Discussion on when to have the single portal is focused for now on January, March, and April. Now, extra spring practices is interesting. Going to a single portal window, and which, I mean, like we've talked at different points about having a single portal window. That's been a common discussion point in college sports, I think. But narrowing it down to January, March, or April, I think is really interesting. That's a lot closer to a sort of a plan than anything we've seen so far. What's your reaction to a portal window, only one for football, happening somewhere in there, January, March, or April? Because all of it means nobody's transferring for the spring semester.
I mean, I'd obviously be in favor of it because, I mean, like the way it's just tough to manage everything and like keep everything straight. It's like you think you have the team set, like whenever everyone signs for signing day in February, and like all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, your leading receiver can just transfer like the day after spring practice ends. So I think that's like whenever you read on the message boards and social media when people are like, man, it's just getting harder and harder to follow college sports. And I think people are starting to understand that. It's like, this is really just a free for all. And if there is some, even a little ounce of structure, it would be helpful to the overall product. I think people get lost in the spring portal. I think that's the one where people throw up their arms and are like, I don't know if I have the stomach to keep following this because this is just kind of BS. And I kind of agree with them. So
yeah, when you have players going back to the well and trying to renegotiate, getting a new deal in December and going back and doing it again in April, it is ridiculous. And I think that's probably one of the biggest complaints is like you know, Bob Dylan line in what is it? Stuck inside a mobile with the Memphis Blues again. The line of, I'm sitting here just trying to find out what price you have to pay to get out of going through these things twice. Like, yeah, I feel like that's all the conversations between the collectives and the players. Like, what can we pay you now in December so that we don't have to hear from you in April? Like, how can we just lock this up? What would be the ideal time? Like, I don't think a portal window in January would work, right? Like, unless it's like the first 2 weeks. Like, I don't really know, because I feel like that'd be tough. I feel like it has to be where the spring window is now, like April to May, right?
And I think another thing that bothers people is the opt out of bowl games and just guys doing whatever. And like, I think if you have the portal window in January, then you're going to have guys sit out of bowl games, and which further dampens the product of, ESPN has to fill airspace and they have 30 bowl games on TV. People at least want to watch like the full teams play. So I think if you have it in January, it still continues to incentivize like, okay, like I'm just going to opt out and I don't care about the end of the season. And that's not what we want. We want, as long as like they're playing football, let them play football, and like let's at least make the bowl games matter for something. So I think it makes sense to do it in March, April. I don't know. And then we'll see, like, again, that counter move to what the ACC does with those 21 practices. Like, I think that's interesting. I mean, a lot of guys kind of wait to see where they stand at the end of spring ball. So, like, do you have a shortened spring ball now? Like, are guys still going to get that sense? I don't know. So I'm interested to see how it all works. But I don't like the idea of January, but I do like just one. Like, I just wanted – I think if there's, like, 1 month of craziness and the portal's open and things are happening – people can get down with that. But whenever there's 2 or 3 and just unknowns at every corner, I think that's when people start saying, I just can't follow college sports anymore.
Yeah. Maybe if you went to this adjusted spring camp schedule where you could have 21 practices, you could put them wherever you want them, and you had a portal window in April, you sort of compel guys to go. So let's say Pitt did 12 practices in March, right? Guys would be compelled to go because they'd still be on the team. They'd still be on scholarship and going to classes. So they get one more run through spring camp to find out where they stand on the depth chart. They want to go in the portal. They can. Teams can, Pitt could go out and get whoever they need from the portal and then have 9 more practices in like May, June, right? And there you can get your new guys acclimated. It's not 15 practices like you would normally have in spring camp, but it would be at least 9 more practices. So you could have, because that's probably something the coaches would say, like, well, we don't like having the portal window after spring camp because we want our new transfers to come in and practice with the team, right? And learn the offense and learn the defense and all of that. So maybe that would be a happy medium on that to kind of compel the players to go through a little bit of spring camp, but still have some spring camp left over for the guys you're bringing in. But that's the most interesting thing I've seen from ACC spring meetings so far. That stuff from Ross Dellinger. Is that have you seen anything else interesting jump out there?
I thought he tweeted something about like it was something more NIL related. Like most of the deals that people have pushed through as NIL deals, like the past 3 years, like would not be, I don't know, kosher or sanctioned under like the House settlement. So yeah. I don't know how they're gonna like cap NIL. Like I think that toothpaste is already out of the tube. So like I don't know, but I think it's like the ones wherever like the donors are just like kind of paying players. Like that's what they're trying to get rid of, and like only like the Kenny Pickett Oaklander like NIL deal. Like that's what it was meant to be, and not the pay for play. I just don't know how they're ever going to regulate that to a point where it makes sense. But I guess there's conversations being had about it.
Yeah, I think that was sort of the trade-off of like, okay, if we're going to do revenue sharing, the flip side of that is we're going to make NIL deals actually NIL. You know what I mean? Actual name, image, likeness, fair market value, and all of that, which probably just means like a lot of paperwork. Like if you want to do a deal like this, you're going to have to produce the paperwork to convince us that it's a genuine thing. And it was 70% of past deals between collectives and the student athletes would have been denied, whereas 90% of the deals with public companies probably would have been approved. So you're not going to put the toothpaste back into the tube, but you can kind of make it a little bit more orderly, a little less messy than it's been. All right. Marlon Barnes, Truther, says feels like kicking might be a concern this year. I would agree about that. I feel like we've talked about that a few times, that James London didn't exactly get rave reviews in spring camp, missed 2 field goals in the spring game, or just 1? You remember?
I thought they each missed 1. I could be wrong.
They each? Okay. But yeah, I mean, I think it was always going to be a step back from Ben Sauls because he was really good. But I don't know how far that step back is going to be. I don't know. What do you think?
It's hard to say because, I mean, like, London did have a bunch of like 50+ yard kicks at Murray State last year, and kicking's kicking. Like it's not like the big jump from SBS to FBS is the same as a kicker as it is for a quarterback. I mean, you're still just lining up and kicking. So he does have a strong leg. So I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see how it goes. And I thought it was interesting today. I interviewed a kicker that they're recruiting for next year, and I thought it was interesting when I talked to him. I don't know how to say his last name, Haran Zurikat from Fox Chapel. And he said, I didn't think they were going to recruit me. Like I visited a couple times, but they signed a kicker last year and they got this transfer for multiple years. So it was interesting. He's like, yeah, they offered me a couple weeks ago and they really are showing a lot of interest in me. So I don't know if that's telling one way or another or something, but he also can punt. Yeah. So maybe they're recruiting him as a punter. So
is that what he said?
He said they're recruiting him as both.
Oh, okay. Hey, might as well. I mean, like, it's not like you're going to be, well, you could be worn out, I guess, kicking a lot, but I think you could do it. Paul Sebastian says, convince me that the Pitt game in Ireland against Wisconsin is good for Pitt in the program, because from what I can tell, this is a Pitt home game, which gives us 1 less at the stadium. I would think, I don't know how these things work, Jim, but I would assume if you're playing a home game overseas, you get bigger cut of the money. Would you assume that?
I would assume that's the trade-off. Like if you're giving up your home game, like whatever revenue, like maybe it's 60-40 instead of 50-50, whatever.
Right. So I don't know. Would it be cool to have Wisconsin at Acrisure Stadium? Yeah. I guess it's like exposure, right? Everybody watched Georgia Tech beat Florida State last year. Wasn't that game
Yeah.
Wasn't that game overseas? Yeah. So everybody watched Georgia Tech beat Florida State last year. I don't know if anybody really cares about Georgia Tech as a result of that, but more people will be watching you. So, it's good for that. I don't know how that translates in terms of money or things like that. The exposure side of it, but that's a positive, right?
I think so. I mean, because it'll be like that week 0, like before everyone else plays. So like everyone literally is going to watch you. I mean, sometimes I always kind of wrestle with the idea like should Pitt have a marquee game that Labor Day weekend, but then you see the schedule get released today, and it's like I don't know who would watch Pitt because there's like 25 other good games of ranked on ranked, Power 4 on Power 4. So I'm okay whenever Pitt like opens the season with Duquesne because it's like, all right, get out of there and go watch all the big games and maybe save your bigger game, your West Virginia, your Wisconsin for a different weekend where it can get more exposure. So I don't know. I mean, Wisconsin's not going to sell out Acrisure Stadium. Like we've seen this exact scenario before. Like we already mentioned that the 3 non-conference schools that will sell out the stadium. But like when Oklahoma State played here, it's not like there was some big crowd or Central Florida or anything like that. So like, I don't know. I mean, I guess you give up a home game and that stinks, but like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Are you going to go to Ireland?
No, are you?
I've thought about it.
Well, via con Dios, sir, or whatever they say in Ireland. Aaron Grobra or whatever it is. Does that mean the same? Is that like?
I'll have
does that mean the
another
same
Guinness.
is that the same as via con Dios? Let's see. Josh Newark says joining late, but what concert are you seeing tomorrow to change the weekly podcast? I'm not. We have a youth baseball game tomorrow night at 8:00. So that can't be moved. The podcast can be moved. D1 Panthers H2P says, can Pitt basketball be better than they were 2 and 3 years ago? Well, I don't know. I don't think the roster right now is better than it was 2 years ago with Bub Carrington and Blake Hinson and Jalen Lowe. No. And I don't think it's better than it was 3 years ago with Blake Hinson and Nelly Cummings and Jamarius Burton and those guys. I don't think the roster right now, as it's constructed, looks better than those rosters. So, no. Now, does that necessarily mean that can this team outperform those teams? Possibly. I mean, I would say the team 2 years ago fell short of expectations. I would say the team 3 years ago, didn't get off to a very good start. You could say that they fell short of expectations, even though they made the NCAA tournament. So, can they be better than they were 2 and 3 years ago? I don't think the roster right now is better, but anything can happen once they start playing games.
I mean, that roster 3 years ago was picked to finish 14th in the ACC. Like we didn't think Blake Hinson was Blake Hinson at the time. Like we didn't know Nelly Cummings would translate. So I mean, like for them to be that good, like they're going to need those kind of surprises. They're going to need like DeMarco Minor to like all of a sudden average 15 points and Barry Dunning Jr. just to be this great ACC caliber wing. And like maybe those things happen and maybe they are. But right now, what day is it? May 13th? I'm not convinced. So no. I don't know. Maybe ask me in a month if and when they get more players added to this roster. But right now, I'm not like overly optimistic about this team's chances for next year.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Deshaun Jackson will make 153s like Blake Hinson, Nobody saw that coming 3 years ago. So maybe we'll all be like really surprised. Or Noyes Indrusitis. Maybe he's the man. Maybe. Let's see. Scrolling through here. Will Z says he wants an update on the youth baseball game. I'm not going to do that. The reason you're not going to get an update on the youth baseball game on the Thursday morning pit is because I will have recorded Thursday's morning pit before the youth baseball game. I will not be doing that afterward. Wait, was there something else? Oh, real quick before we end, we could probably talk about this more next week. Today's morning pit, Jim, I talked about the top five position battles on the team. I'm curious, what do you think is the biggest position battle on the team Most important, most intriguing, biggest impact on the season.
I'm interested to see just how the whole offensive line aligns itself, because I think there's probably about 6 or 7 guys fighting for 5 spots. So I think that's a big battle in itself. I don't know. I could probably talk myself into like the quarterback 2 spot. Like I think the Mason Heinschel and Cole Gonzalez. I think that's an interesting battle. What else do I have? Middle linebacker. Like is Jeremiah Marcelin? Is he pushing Braylon Lovelace? Because I kind of think he is. So yeah, I think there's a couple across the board.
That'd be interesting. I wonder about safety. Do you feel like there's a position battle at safety? Or do you feel like it's set Cruz Brookins, Javon McIntyre, those two with everybody else behind them?
I think they really like Jesse Anderson.
Mm-hmm. And they brought in the transfer.
Yeah.
Kabir Baines Marquez.
Yeah. I mean, sure. Yeah, I can buy that one too.
I thought wide receiver too is a bit of a position, but like, because it's like Kenny Johnson and everybody else. And I don't know how that everybody else shakes out. I think we've talked about it a few times. I don't know how that everybody else shakes out. And I don't know, Sincere Lee's been hurt. Raphael Williams didn't practice all spring. Like, I don't know, not sure how that, it's more a position battle to sort of sort out how they line up 2 through 6. Because I think Kenny Johnson's number 1, but I have no idea what that group is going to look like this year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think we have an idea of like who's like on the cut line and who's probably in that top 6. We just don't know which order. So I think that the competition there is going to be pretty big in training camp, just because Poppy will be back and maybe Sincerely will be back, and they'll have the full room, and we'll see kind of how it shakes down. So I think the spring gave a lot of guys some opportunities. I think some ran with it, some maybe didn't. So we'll see.
Yeah, and then the left side, I mean, you mentioned the offensive line. I think specifically the left side is what's really intriguing to me, because there's 3 guys battling for 2 spots. And, the spring game showed that Kendall Stanley can probably play at left guard, which between him being able to play either spot, Keith Gouveia being able to play guard, Jeff Percy being able to play tackle. I don't know who the best 2 of those 3 are, but I think they'll be able to find it out. Like, they've got the depth, and the position battles this spring or in the summer will kind of sort it out. But I don't know. That'll be interesting to see. I think tomorrow, because I the morning pit this week, I just wanted to talk about Pitt football. Last week, I got into a bunch of stuff about like state of Pitt athletics and ACC and conferences, all this nonsense. I just wanted to talk football. So I was like, position battles today. Tomorrow is going to be breakout players. So we talked about some of that tonight. Might be why I have so many stats on Jaden Moore, but spoiler alert. Oh, well, it'll be live in about 7.5 hours anyway. So people will be able to check it out then. All right. I think we can wrap up on that note. Yeah. Do you have anything else to add? Or are we all done?
Pitt baseball.
Wait, yeah. 15-1?
At PNC Park over arch rival Penn State.
Is Penn State any good?
I don't know.
I mean, is that a shocking outcome? Like,
no,
I don't know what
they
Penn
beat them
State
earlier in the year, so they got the season sweep. So Pitt baseball obviously had a struggling year, but 7-2 over its last 9.
Okay.
They have wins over a ranked West Virginia team, beat Penn State, swept Virginia Tech. They have a home series with Clemson. So if there is a world where they could sweep Clemson, which doesn't seem likely since Clemson's a top 20 team, but like they'd be in an interesting case going into the ACC tournament and the NCAA tournament selection show. So that never really seemed possible. It still seems very, very, very unlikely, but like their season's not totally cooked, I guess, if they have a successful weekend against Clemson.
Okay. So I guess we'll keep an eye on that. Good call. I'm glad you brought that up. I had that open and I meant to get to it, but yeah, that's a big one. Some big numbers to put up. And they kind of spread it out. They had 3 5-run innings. So good for them. Good for them. Getting that win over Penn State, and I guess we'll keep an eye on what they do this weekend. But all right, thanks for bringing that up, Jim. Appreciate it. Thanks to everybody who chimed in tonight with the comments and the questions and all those things. And make sure you like this video and subscribe. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Check out the website Panther-Lair.com. and we'll be back with a morning pit again tomorrow. So thanks for your time tonight. Thanks for watching the live stream. Have a good rest of your Tuesday. We'll catch up with you tomorrow for the morning pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.